The abandoned Starship in a quiet, remote area on Earth, hidden from the world's eyes, a strange event was unfolding. On a grassy field, far from any major city, a massive, rusted Starship lay abandoned. It had been there for years, decades, perhaps silent and unmoving. No one had ever come to claim it, and no one even knew it existed. The ship, though enormous, looked like nothing special. It appeared to be nothing more than a piece of junk, a relic from a time long past. The aliens who had left it behind called it worthless, and they had abandoned it here, on a planet they considered insignificant. The local government, curious, but largely dismissive, had kept an eye on the ship ever since it arrived. It had crashed into the field many years ago, and its alien origin was immediately clear. But when attempts to communicate with the ship failed, the world simply ignored it. No one expected it to be anything more than a strange, unexplainable relic. Some scientists had taken a look at it, but their findings were disappointing. It was broken. It didn't work. It seemed empty, completely dead. As the years passed, the Starship's mystery began to fade from memory. People had bigger problems to worry about. Aliens weren't real. The ship was a freak accident, a strange but ultimately meaningless event. But everything was about to change. One day, a small team of researchers was sent to examine the wreckage, tasked with studying it in the hopes of learning something new about the alien technology. Among them was Dr. Lara Jennings, a young but brilliant scientist who had heard the stories of the ship and was eager to explore its mysteries. She was one of the few who still believed that there was something worth investigating. The others had missed. The field where the ship lay was calm, the quiet broken only by the rustling of wind through the tall grass. As the team approached the ship, they saw it from a distance, its enormous, sleek shape gleaming faintly in the daylight. Even after years of neglect, the ship still seemed to hum with an unnatural energy, though no one had been able to figure out why. It's amazing how something so large can look so ... useless, Dr. Jennings said softly, her eyes wide with wonder as she took in the sight of the alien ship. Don't get too excited, Dr. Jennings, said one of her colleagues. Dr. Thomas Richter, with a sarcastic grin. It's not going to suddenly start working just because you're here. This thing has been dead for decades. But Jennings wasn't deterred. You never know, she said with a quiet smile. Maybe we've just been looking at it the wrong way. There could be more here than we realize. They made their way closer to the Starship, stepping carefully around the debris that surrounded it. The ship's hull was scratched and scarred, but the damage didn't seem extensive. It looked like a ship that had just stopped working, not one that had been destroyed, but it had no visible signs of life. No engines running, no lights flashing, just a husk of a once powerful machine. As the team set up their equipment and began scanning the ship, Dr. Jennings felt a sense of unease. There was something about the ship that didn't feel quite right. It was silent, almost too silent. The air around it felt charged, as though something was waiting to happen. Begin the scans, Dr. Richter instructed, breaking the silence. We'll start with the exterior and then move inside. Let's see if we can get a reading on anything. The team's equipment beeped as it scanned the ship's surface. At first, the readings seemed normal, nothing unusual, nothing out of the ordinary. But then something unexpected happened. One of the scanners, the one closest to the ship's control panel, started picking up strange signals. Wait a minute, Dr. Jennings said, leaning forward, her heart racing. What's that? The scanner displayed a series of patterns. Flashing rapidly, then stabilizing. It was a signal, a faint but distinct pulse coming from deep inside the ship. At first, they thought it was a glitch, something wrong with the scanner. But no, this was something real. The ship was giving off energy, very faint but unmistakable. Dr. Richter frowned, looking at the data. This can't be right. We've checked this ship 1,000 times before, and nothing has ever shown up. The power's been off for years. But Dr. Jennings didn't back down. This is different, she insisted. This is alive, somehow. I don't think we've been looking at it correctly. I think it's waiting for us to activate it. She motioned to the team to gather around as she began working the controls on her scanner. Slowly, carefully, she input a series of commands. The faint pulse grew stronger. The air around them began to crackle. A soft hum filled the atmosphere, almost imperceptible at first, but it was there. The ship was waking up. Is that? Dr. Richter started, but before he could finish his question, the ground beneath them trembled. The ship's surface began to glow faintly, the markings on its hull lighting up as though it were powering up for the first time in decades. Jennings stepped back, her eyes wide with awe and excitement. This ship, it's not dead. It's just been dormant, waiting for someone to bring it back to life. As the team looked on in shock, the alien starship began to hum louder. The dormant engines flickered to life, their power systems slowly coming online. The ship, once abandoned and deemed useless, was now stirring, and humanity was about to uncover the true potential of the worthless ship. What no one realized was that they had just unlocked something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. This starship, abandoned by the aliens, was about to become humanity's greatest weapon, and the galaxy was about to feel the consequences. Asterisk, the Starship awakens, the once dead starship, now humming with a newfound energy, seemed to come to life before their eyes. Dr. Jennings and her team stood in stunned silence, the hum of the ship vibrating through their bones. The ship was far from what they had expected. They had thought it was a broken relic, abandoned by the aliens as an unworthy asset, but now they could feel its power surging, almost as if it had been waiting for the right moment. Is it ... Is it alive? Lieutenant Miller asked, his voice shaking with awe as he watched the glow from the ship intensify. Dr. Jennings stepped closer to the ship's control panel, her fingers trembling as she reached for the console. The alien symbols that covered the panel seemed to pulse with energy, almost as if the ship was communicating with her. The moment her fingers made contact with the controls, a soft vibration ran through the air, and the entire ship seemed to sigh with relief. The massive doors of the ship's belly opened with a quiet hiss, revealing a cavernous interior. It was unlike anything the team had ever seen. The walls glowed faintly, with alien architecture that seemed to adapt and shift before their eyes. The layout of the interior was strange, unrecognizable to any human design, but amidst the alien technology, they felt an undeniable pull, an invitation to explore what lay beyond. This is beyond anything we've ever imagined, Dr. Jennings said breathlessly. It's a ship, yes, but it's also something much more. The team ventured inside the ship, their lights flickering as they moved deeper into the structure. The walls hummed in response to their every step, as if the ship was acknowledging their presence. The air was thick with a strange energy, and the further they went, the more they could sense the immense power lying dormant inside the ship's core. Then they arrived at the heart of the Starship, the control room. The massive chamber was filled with glowing alien consoles, their screens flickering with incomprehensible data. A giant central pillar rose from the floor, glowing with a bright blue light, as if a core of raw power was pulsing deep within it. "This is it," Dr. Jennings whispered, her eyes wide with excitement. "This is the heart of the ship. This is where the real power lies." Suddenly, the consoles flickered to life. Symbols appeared on the screens, shifting and changing with lightning speed. The air crackled with static, and a low rumble echoed through the walls. The ship was coming alive, and it was sending out a signal that, unbeknownst to them, was not just reaching Earth, but the farthest corners of the galaxy. "It's calling something," Lieutenant Miller said, his voice filled with unease. "What is it doing?" Before anyone could answer, a voice low and mechanical boomed from the ship's speakers. The words were unintelligible, but the tone was unmistakable. A command, a warning, or perhaps an invitation. Dr. Jennings stepped forward, instinctively placing her hand on one of the consoles. She didn't understand the language, but the words felt strangely familiar. It was as if the ship was reaching out to her directly, its consciousness connecting with her own. The voice grew louder, clearer, and then, suddenly, the ship fell silent. The hum of its engines ceased, and the glow of the control room dimmed. But in the stillness, something new began to happen. The ship's walls began to shift, the architecture twisting and bending as if it were alive, responding to some unseen command. "What did you do?" Dr. Richter asked, his voice tense. "I don't know," Dr. Jennings replied, her face pale. "I didn't touch anything unusual, but the ship it's responding to us." As the team gathered around the control panels, watching in awe and fear, the entire ship seemed to pulse, its energy gathering strength. The exterior of the ship lit up, and for the first time in years, the old rusted wreck began to resemble something far more dangerous. Outside, deep in space, the long-forgotten signal that had been sent from the ship began to reach the ears of those who once owned Italian forces, who had left the ship for dead, who had abandoned it as unworthy. And now they were watching. The Stellar Valiant, as they would soon name it, had just been awakened. And with its awakening, it was calling the attention of more than just humanity. The fate of the galaxy was beginning to shift. Meanwhile, deep within the control room, Dr. Jennings, who had once believed the ship was a broken relic, now felt an overwhelming sense of dread. This ship, abandoned and forgotten, was no longer just an ancient, worthless object. It was a weapon, a deadly force unlike anything the galaxy had seen, and it was in humanity's hands. But as the power surged, Dr. Jennings couldn't help but wonder who had left the ship behind. Why had they abandoned it? And what would happen now that humanity had unlocked its power? Before she could answer her own questions, an explosion rocked the ship, sending the team stumbling backward. The lights flickered and dimmed as alarms blared. The ship wasn't just alive, it was preparing for something, and it seemed humanity had just awakened something far bigger than they could ever imagine. A loud, sharp, mechanical whine echoed throughout the ship, followed by the sound of deep thrusters firing up. The Stellar Valiant was moving. It was preparing to leave Earth, and no one knew what would happen when it did. Humanity's unexpected power, the deep hum of the Stellar Valiant reverberated through the ship, a constant reminder that something far beyond human understanding was awakening. The crew, still recovering from the shock of the explosion and the ship's sudden activation, scrambled to make sense of what was happening. The control room, now lit by the ominous glow of alien technology, seemed almost alive. The walls shifted, with subtle movements, as though the ship was reacting to the crew's presence, responding to their every touch. "Get the communications back online," Dr. Jennings shouted, her voice trembling with a mix of excitement and fear. "We need to understand what this ship is really capable of." The technicians scrambled to bring up the ship's systems. There, screens flickered to life, displaying vast amounts of data. Alien symbols flashed, each one more complex than the last. But amidst the chaos, one thing was clear: the ship was responding to them, and its power was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. The weapon systems were coming online. "We need to be careful," Dr. Richter said, his eyes glued to the monitor in front of him. "If this ship has the weaponry we think it does, we might be getting into more than we can handle." Jennings nodded but didn't take her eyes off the control panels. "We can handle it. We have to." As the crew continued their frantic work, the ship's engines powered up, and the Stellar Valiant began to lift off the ground. The rumble of the thrusters filled the air, and the sound of metal grinding against metal echoed as the massive Starship began to rise. The once barren field outside was now bathed in the light of the Starship's engine glow. Outside the ship, Earth was unaware of what was unfolding. The world's governments were still trying to figure out how to deal with the sudden alien arrival. But inside the ship, something much more profound was happening. Humanity had just unlocked the full potential of what they once thought was a worthless relic, and they were about to discover that the galaxy had been waiting for them. "Commander Jennings, look at this." Lieutenant Miller shouted from across the room. "The ship's targeting systems are locking onto something big." Jennings turned quickly, her heart racing. The Stellar Valiant's scanners were tracking something in deep space, something far away but massive. A ship, a fleet. It didn't matter. The Stellar Valiant was preparing to engage, and the crew had no idea what would happen when they fired. Without warning, the ship's weapon systems powered up. The display screens flashed with bright lights as the alien weapons charged. Jennings and the crew watched in stunned silence as the targeting systems locked onto an unknown object in deep space. The ship was getting ready to fire. "Do we have control over this?" Dr. Richter asked nervously, glancing at Jennings. She didn't respond immediately, her mind racing. I think we do. The ship's systems are linked to us now. We've somehow activated its full arsenal." "Should we fire?" Lieutenant Miller asked, his voice unsure. Jennings looked at the screen where the locked target appeared. It was a large fleet of ships headed toward Earth. There was no mistaking it. This was an alien fleet, and it was coming. The Stellar Valiant had been abandoned for a reason, but now it had become humanity's shield and weapon. "We have no choice," Dr. Jennings finally said. "The fleet is coming. We need to defend Earth, and this is the only chance we have." With a deep breath, she pressed the button to fire. The weapons on the Stellar Valiant roared to life. A massive energy beam erupted from the ship's bow, cutting through the vastness of space with terrifying precision. The beam tore into the approaching alien fleet, obliterating the first wave of ships. Explosions rang out, and debris scattered in all directions. The enemy ships, caught off guard by the unexpected firepower, quickly began retreating, but the Stellar Valiant wasn't finished yet. Another shot fired, and then another, each one more devastating than the last. The fleet that had once seemed unstoppable was being torn apart by humanity's new weapon. But the battle wasn't over. More ships emerged from the darkness, some massive and others smaller, darting through space, eager to return fire. Humanity had proven its strength, but the galaxy wasn't ready to surrender just yet. "We're not done," Dr. Jennings muttered, her fingers flying over the controls. "We need to finish this before they regroup." The crew worked feverishly, and as the Stellar Valiant continued to fire, the alien fleet began to falter. Humanity's warship, once thought to be nothing more than a forgotten relic, had become the galaxy's most powerful weapon. But as the battle raged on, Dr. Jennings couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. What had they unleashed? And why had the aliens abandoned such a powerful ship? Before she could answer her own questions, the ship's scanners beeped. Again, showing more incoming ships. Bigger ships. It was clear now, this wasn't just a battle for Earth. This was a war for control of the galaxy. And humanity, for the first time in history, had a seat at the table. The fight for Earth's survival had just become the first chapter in a much larger story, one where humanity's unexpected rise would be felt across the stars. And the galaxy, once unaware of humanity's potential, was about to learn that nothing could stop them now. The final confrontation, the Stellar Valiant cut through the cold expanse of space, its weapons charged and ready. The alien fleet, now in disarray, was regrouping at the far edge of the solar system. Humanity's weapon, once abandoned and left for dead, had become the galaxy's most powerful force. The Stellar Valiant, with its alien technology and advanced weaponry, had turned the tide in their favor, but the battle was far from over. The enemy was not going to give up so easily. Dr. Jennings paced the bridge of the ship, her mind racing. The first wave of the alien fleet had been destroyed, but now a new and far more dangerous force was closing in. These ships were larger, more powerful, and their weapons seemed capable of matching the Stellar Valiant's might. "They've brought reinforcements," Lieutenant Miller said, his voice tight with urgency. "These ships are unlike anything we've seen before. They're enormous." Dr. Jennings glanced at the tactical screen. The enemy fleet had regrouped, and now they were launching an attack that would test humanity's newfound strength. The larger ships were forming a defensive perimeter around their smaller vessels, creating a near-impenetrable wall. "We have to hit them hard before they can regroup fully," Dr. Jennings said, her voice filled with determination. "This is humanity's one shot at proving we're not just a target to be wiped out. We've unlocked the power of the stars, and we will use it." The crew nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. They had been underestimated, laughed at, and left behind by an alien race that now had no choice but to face the consequences of their mistake. The Stellar Valiant was ready, and humanity was about to show its true potential. "Activate the enhanced weapons systems," Dr. Jennings commanded. "We're going all in. I want all energy directed into the primary cannons. We'll target their command ship first." The Stellar Valiant's weapons glowed with a brilliant blue light as it charged its most devastating attack. The ship's enormous cannons powered up, focusing all its energy into a single shot. The tension on the bridge was unbearable as the crew waited for the inevitable. They were about to unleash a force that had never been seen before, a force that could decide the fate of the galaxy. Firing in 302, 1. Dr. Jennings counted down. The cannon discharged with a deafening roar, the beam of energy lashing out through the void of space. It sliced through the enemy fleet like a knife through butter, obliterating several smaller ships in its path. The command ship, however, was still standing strong, its shields holding firm against the incredible power of the Stellar Valiant's weapon. "That didn't do enough damage," Cora said, a look of concern crossing her face. Their shields are holding. We need to push harder, Dr. Jennings said. We've got one more shot. But if we don't take them out now, we'll be facing even more retaliation. The alien fleet, now reeling from the initial blast, had begun to fire back. Their weapons tore through space, sending shockwaves that rattled the stellar Valiant. The ship's hull groaned under the pressure, but it held. The crew, each of them silently praying for success, worked feverishly at their stations. We can't keep dodging them forever, Lieutenant Miller said, his voice rising with urgency. They're locking onto us with their heavy artillery. Dr. Jennings's mind raced. This was the moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. The ship they had once thought of as a worthless relic had now become their weapon of mass destruction, and they had no choice but to finish what they had started. Full power to the engines, Dr. Jennings ordered. We'll take the fight straight to them. The stellar Valiant surged forward, its engines roaring to life. It moved with an unexpected speed for such a massive vessel, closing the distance between itself and the command ship in seconds. The alien fleet, caught off guard by this sudden maneuver, struggled to keep up. We've got one shot, Dr. Jennings said, her voice steady. Make it count. The crew watched as the primary cannon powered up once more, the ship's entire energy being focused into that singular point. The massive alien ship loomed ahead, its shields glowing brightly as it braced for impact. Firing now, Cora said, her voice tense. The stellar Valiant unleashed its final, most powerful attack. The energy beam shot forth with a thunderous roar, and this time the alien ship's shields were no match. The beam tore through them effortlessly, slamming into the heart of the enemy vessel. The command ship's core exploded in a flash of light, sending debris spiraling into the void. The remaining alien ships began to retreat, their morale shattered by the destruction of their flagship. The stellar Valiant stood victorious. On the bridge, a collective sigh of relief swept through the crew. They had done it. Against all odds, humanity had won. The ship that had once been abandoned, left behind as a useless piece of junk, had become humanity's greatest weapon, and now it had just changed the fate of the galaxy. We did it, Dr. Jennings whispered, her heart pounding in her chest. We really did it. The galaxy had underestimated humanity's strength, but now they would know better. The stellar Valiantha, once worthless starship, had turned the tide of the war, and the galaxy would never forget the power of humanity.